You're listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. This is the show that talks about identity and access management and making sure you know who has access to what. Let's get started. Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Oh, not so bad. Yourself?
I'm doing good, man. Here in the RSM podcast, RSM-sponsored podcasting suite, the Suite. We've been here all week.
Stop doing that.
Yeah. Well, I only can do it for a few more times.
That's true.
I've had a great couple of days here. Learned so much. Got to see old friends, make new friends. But I do want to lodge a complaint.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lodge the same complaint which I normally do, which is
too cold
this free breakfast that you've provided me is not meeting my standards. No, it won't be that. It's a real complaint. Bought 2 bottles of water at the pool the other day, or Denise did, and you know what it costs? 2 bottles of water.
I'm going to say $15.
$30.
$30?
30.
Well, how big were these bottles?
They're big, but I mean, when you're talking about water, does it matter how big they are?
I guess not.
Absolutely crazy. I don't think they can blame that on inflation.
Well, that's Vegas for you. I mean, everything here is just expensive.
Yeah, usually I'd say it's by the end of the week, I'm like, I can't wait to get out of here. I think if I don't get out of here ASAP, I'm going to be broke.
Well, we will definitely be getting out of here. We're recording this as kind of the last day of the Gartner conference here. It's been a wild ride. Lots of great guests. We've got another great one here. We're going to be talking with Brad Tumy. He's a senior solutions engineer at Indykite. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Really, it's pretty cool. I've listened to a lot, so it's pretty cool to be here, and it is definitely a sweet.
Don't get him started.
Oh, it's a sweet.
So before we get too far along, if you are a listener, you will know that the first question we always ask our guests is, how did they get into the identity space? What's your identity origin story? Did you choose identity, or did it choose you?
I'm going to say identity chose me. I think I started my career as an application developer, and a couple years into my career, somebody that I'd worked with had left and started working for a new company, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, I'm at this new company. We're doing identity management, and since that's what you and I were working on at the last place, they want to talk to you." And I thought, what are you talking about? I have no idea. I had no idea what identity meant. I had no idea what he was talking about. We had written some code to create, they were RSA credentials at the time. And to me, we're just writing code to create RSA credentials. And I really don't know what RSA credentials are. So from there, and this was early 2000s, from there, it just sort of ended up going to that new company. And they did a lot of federal contracting, and at the time, I think it was EOF program, like around 863 and the was M0404 that was coming out. So all the federal agencies were scrambling to federate, and so my role there was basically to do a bake-off between the major vendors at the time. So that sort of, I parlayed that into a consulting career, ended up working for Oracle, ended up starting my own company, and did that for 15 years, and, just kind of focused a lot with like 1 or 2 vendors, just so I could really get, kind of like the T-shaped expertise, so I could really focus. And then just, more recently with Indykite. So I guess the long answer there is it's kind of stumbled into it, and then it grabbed a hold of me.
Right on. And that's my philosophy. I think most people, at least to my conversations I've been having, is that generally identity picked them somehow. They fell into it, stumbled into it, and the hooks have been deep and generally haven't gotten away from it. I want to talk about Indykite in a minute, but from a conference perspective, how has the Gartner conference been for you? Any highlights, any interesting stories, conversations, things like that have taken place?
Yeah, I would like to. I'd like to second the cost of water here. In the desert, the water is not cheap.
And it's running out.
The conference has been good. It's been really good. I mean, this is the second or third conference I've been to in the last year. But I got to say, it's nice to be back in front of people and not have a video screen or a monitor in between us.
Unless you don't get to a session in time.
Yes, the sessions have been really good. I mean, I think for me there's two highlights. One is that the sessions themselves have affirmed kind of the vision that we're working on at Indykite. And so it's good to hear that from someone like Gartner, and not just some random person said, hey, did a project like that once too. So it's nice to have that confirmation that we're on the right track. The other thing is just and I know it's everybody says it, but it's the networking, the conversations. From identity management is such a small community. Everybody knows everybody. So, you're seeing old friends, you're seeing people that maybe you've never met them in person before, but you've talked to them or you've exchanged emails for 15 years.
Such as this conversation.
Yes, exactly. But it's the random conversations. You're standing in line for coffee and the person in front of you just turns around and starts talking. And they look at your badge and they're like, oh, I've never heard of your company before. Tell me what you do. And that you go down into this rabbit hole with them, and they start, you're comparing use cases, you're comparing situations, or in a lot of cases you don't even talk technology or identity management. You just talk. You just it's where are you from? Oh, cool. I've been there. Or I've never been there. It's that I think that's the best part. And it's a little weird for me because I'm typically pretty introverted. I spend a lot of time in my hotel room when I go to conferences, just because the crowds tend to be a little overwhelming. But with this, I found myself like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna grab my laptop, go find a table. I'll be near the crowd. Kind of like
Crowd adjacent.
yeah, exactly. And then you see someone that you haven't seen in a couple of years, and so it's been cool. So I'd say those are the two highlights. Lowlights really haven't been any. I mean, just joking about the cost of the water. I was going to say the they charge for coffee in the hotel room, but it's coffee's been plentiful downstairs, so I can't complain too much about that.
That is a bummer because, that is my complaint too. And it's a first world complaint.
Yeah.
We're in this suite. Thank you, RSM again.
The sweet
suite. And now you got me doing it. But they cap you at 2 internet devices and then charge you $15 to connect another one. It's a suite and you have 2 devices. What are the expectations there? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, even if you're just one person in the room, you have 4 or 5 devices without a doubt.
I got my phone, 2 laptops, et cetera. So Caesars, get your act together.
On my flight, my Delta flight coming here, I could connect for 4 hours for $5.
But you're connecting in a chair in the sky.
Right. It seems more reasonable to pay only $5 for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, the point I was making is like, if they can do that for $5, couldn't the suite give us more than 2 connections and then not charge $15 for the third?
I'm with you. I get it. I mean,
let's lodge
that's a
those
platform
first
that I
world
will
complaints,
support for
more
sure.
of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brad, you and I have known each other for a long time, like 12, 15 years, something like that. Really good to finally have you on the show. One of the things that I wanted to bring up was Jeff and I did an episode where we reached out to, what was it, 4 or 5 people.
A lot more. Only 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, only
responded.
4 or 5 people responded. And we asked them to do a recording to answer this question. I'm going to pose it to you, which is, our industry's kind of changed names, or there's some name change happening from identity and access management to digital identity. My question to you is, what's the difference between digital identity and access management?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, digital identity is the properties that make up or describe an identity, or which is just a representation of something that's out there in the world, whether it's a human or a non-human, a bot, a machine, a house, a car, whatever it is. Where IAM, are the processes or the services around that. What can you do with that identity? What can you do with those properties? How do you secure it? How do you use it, leverage it for access? Anything that you can do around that, to me, that falls under IAM.
Yeah. I mean, I think of the digital identity as like the fingerprint for a person or a thing, an identity. And when I think of that, it's like, what's the credential information? What is the, the digital signature that makes up a face recognition or whatever kind of biometric we're using?
Sure.
It's also probably the core identity attributes. But beyond that, the digital identity includes more, right? It's all the things that we want to collect and know about a person. It's why privacy statements exist, because we're going to collect all this information about you. We're going to get data from maybe another source like a DMV. We're going to get information about what entities you belong to or are associated to. We're even going to get data about your shopping preferences or what you've bought in the past or what websites you visited. We're going to store all that. And in talking to you about Indykite and kind of learning what your product is all about, kind of think that you guys are taking an approach to that. And so rather than trying to explain it for you, I'm just going to ask you to explain it.
Sure. So at the core, Indykite's based on the graph database technology. So instead of using LDAP or like relational database or some other data store, we've picked graph technology, and it was a very deliberate decision because of the capabilities the graph provided. The model that we've picked, because of the experiences that we've had with implementations over the last 20 years, is essentially to create two. So each customer would get two or more graph databases. The first one, the identity graph, is that digital identity data that you were describing. So the properties or the credentials that make up that digital identity or that make up that identity. Whereas each customer that we work with, each organization would has their own business model, and to try to fit that or bend that into the identity graph is impossible. And so what you're usually left with is either you're going to massively warp your schema and try to fit it into to the customer's model, or you're going to massively warp the customer's model to match your schema, and neither of those are ideal. So to resolve that, we have the second graph, which we call the knowledge graph, and because the graph database is you can essentially, when you're modeling a graph database, you're using it's a real world model. So it's a one-for-one mapping between what does the customer's business model look like and what does that graph model look like. And so between those two graphs, we import the data, we get the data into the graph, the customer's data, and then we create a relationship between the digital twins or the digital identity from the identity graph to the knowledge graph. And then the way the graph works is it's all about traversing the graph and finding the paths within the graph to what are you related to, what are you connected to, and then using the relationship to determine access or determine entitlements or determine what can you do. And so that's really kind of the way we're seeing, the way we're building the IAM services around that identity.
Yeah, one of the things I've always kind of wondered with graph databases is why they weren't, wholeheartedly adopted more. Because in what I found with developing mostly on the customer side, so like big identity management use cases, is you have these relationships that exist. So it's not only the identity, but you have a relationship to an entity or you have relational data. And if you put that into a SQL database, then the problem is that when you have a massive amount of data, tons of relationships, it crawls to a halt, right? It gets really slow. The idea with the graph database is that, you you're not confined by all of that structure, but it has the power of building the relationships and fetching the data quickly. So I always kind of wondered why identity management systems weren't already adopting the graph. You guys are, so do you know what was holding that back and why you feel like you can overcome those things?
Yeah, so I think it's a resource issue. So if you've spent the last 15, 20 years building your platform, building your foundation, and it's based on LDAP, the three of us, we've all worked in the industry. We've spent the last 15, 20 years convincing people to stop using databases, get your passwords out of the database, put it into an LDAP. Well, are you going to go back and say, hey, remember we told you to use LDAP? We want you to now use a graph database. So plus we've invested, we have millions of lines of code that are all tied pretty closely to LDAP. So to go back and retrofit that is, I think it's a daunting task. That's why we decided to basically start over. There's a lot of open source libraries out there that we could have used. There's products that we could have used, and we could have just retrofitted. But it was cleaner and better for a lot of reasons to just let's start from zero. If you're gonna start a revolution, you gotta throw it all out, right? So
That's right.
that's why we basically started.
So it's kind of been like a tactical problem is that everybody was starting where it said, oh, LDAP's fast, bad at relationships, but we're going to use it because, and then they built their product that way, and it was hard to kind of like abandon that and move to something better.
Yeah, and I think that I don't want to knock LDAP. I've spent the better part of my career working with LDAP, and it was for the identity problems. I think LDAP was better than a database. And it definitely served its purpose for a long time. But when we started hitting that wall with access control and authorization and hitting the limits of RBAC and finding that, okay, well, we're gonna do an RBAC role-based access control project, and oh no, you have twice as many roles. What do we do? It's a recurring problem, and I don't think that. I think as an industry, we've spent a lot of time on authentication, but I don't think we've spent much time on authorization. And so that's kind of we put a line in the sand and said this is where we're going to make the mark, and this is what we're going to go after, and we're going to try to solve that.
So I think it's kind of a two-pronged issue, right? So we talked about digital identity, which sounds pretty clear. Like you guys are, putting together a solution to manage the identity as well as the knowledge, all that, whatever data that business has about the identity or about other things that need a relationship to the identity. You've got the digital identity piece down. Now, when I think of identity and access management, I think of all the processes that are associated with managing that user, extracting that data. So it's kind of the tooling and the management of everything that's in that digital fingerprint of a person, plus all that knowledge about them. So does Indykite also address that piece?
That's a tough question. Or it's not a tough question. That's a complex question. We're building the tools to manage that. The challenges with the services that you need is around that identity is determining what the identity is. So if you're a human and you have a digital identity, you may need to have a password. You may need to have a password reset. You may need to have an in-person verification. You may need to have all the things that a human would need to do in the life cycle of their identity. You can't apply the same services, the same principles to a non-human identity. So building a set of tools and a set of services to manage the life cycle of the identity there's commonality between, but it's not a one size fits all. And so I I guess that's a reason I said the question's kind of tough, is because it's
I've got to imagine you guys take like a service oriented approach to that, right? So providing services, and if you're not going to force structure in that knowledge graph, then you almost have to have like a concept where people can develop their own endpoints to manipulate the data. Of course, if you're going to have an IAM tool, you want to enforce certain principles
Right.
around that. And I was thinking of, and I can't even remember the name, but there was a type of endpoint that's available in the ForgeRock IDM product, right, where you could create your own endpoints. So I'm kind of wondering if that is something that you guys have something similar. And then I also wanted to bring up the whole ForgeRock piece, because just knowing that the founder of your company, Lasse Anderson, was also, one of the founders anyway of ForgeRock. So certainly the right pedigree there. Maybe you can kind of talk about that endpoint thing, and then talk a little bit about what Lasse did to get the company started.
Sure. So, as far as the custom endpoint, I know I know what you're talking about with IDM. You can create with
Custom endpoint,
JavaScript.
right.
You can create a custom endpoint and expose that out as a service. We don't have that. That could be something that we eventually would add.
What would be the value of something like that? Is it essentially the availability of the data?
Yeah, I was trying to think through kind of the use case. I think we would get to a point where that would be, you would need to have, we just can't think of all of the services that a company or an organization would need around their data model. And so would it make sense to have, to be able to extend the platform and say, you know what, create your own APIs, create your own services? I think that makes sense. And that's probably something that we would eventually get to needing. I think it was a couple years into IDM before they had that
Yes,
capability.
you're right. That was something that came down the road.
Yeah. Your second question was more about kind of Lasse's story from the transition from ForgeRock. So I think Lasse, the entrepreneur, saw the opportunity, saw where the market was going. I mean, the vision came from a lot of experience working and with graphs, and as I said earlier, the sort of the validation that here at Gartner is that creating that identity fabric, or creating that service layer, and being able to do more with the identities, and to do more with using graph. I think to Lasse's credit, he had that vision, and then had the opportunity and the means to execute on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything we just talked about, right? That it just seems like a solution that was maybe not so obvious. I don't want to like take away any of the shine of what has been accomplished here, but just to me, it was like,
Yeah, but aren't those the best products?
these are the best.
No, duh. Why didn't we think of that?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's exciting because you're in the mix of it. You're heads down day to day, and you kind of have to pop your head up every once in a while and say, okay, remind me what the vision is. Okay, yes. And then I got to tell you, I was up half the night last night. It was so exciting to. And I apologize for keep going back to this, but just the validation. The people I spoke with yesterday, the presentations yesterday, just like. This is where the market's going. This is where it needs to go. This is where we need to give organizations the tools to be able to build it's sort of building communities out of their customer data, and being able to. And when I say community, what I mean is being able to create the relationships between the digital identities. I mean, right now, we're all of us are, our identities are in tens to hundreds of different data stores, but none of those identities are related across, and none of the identities are related within those data stores. So, for example, to construct a family or an organization, I mean, you just have, most companies just have, a million identities that are all standalone.
Yeah, I mean, why I really wanted to get you on the show and kind of talk through this, like I said, I've known you for like 12, 15 years, and you've been kind of between an independent consultant and kind of running a small consulting business, but you could have easily just done that for the rest of your career, right? You were solving problems and very successful. So there must have been something about Indykite that was just like, all right, I'm going to drop this other stuff that I've been doing, been successful at, take a chance with something new. And, what is that? What is it that drove you to make that decision?
It's two things. So number one, it's the vision and being able to execute on that. Having spent a long time in this industry, the problems that we're solving really resonated, and I experienced those as an implementer firsthand. The challenges with LDAP, the challenges with trying to create access policies that are complex enough to solve the problems that the customers or that the organizations are having. I mean, the number of times that my response to a customer was, "Okay, well, just let's come up with a role, and we'll do role-based access control, or tell me what the permission needs to look like." But being able to be a part of, and I'm going into the second part now, but to be able to be part of something much bigger. It's as a independent consultant, it's a little bit of a lonely world. You come into an organization and you spend some time there, but at the end of the day, you're not really part of that organization. So I think to be part of a group of people that are building and executing, and at this stage, being able to influence some of that. So they're like, "Hey, you worked in identity, Brad. What do you think about this?" Or what do you, and being able to say, "Okay, well, I can look back and I know that, kind of feeding my ego a little bit. I helped make that decision, or the product's going that direction because I contributed to that."
It's the new monuments, right?
Yeah.
You're building bridges, but it was like the old days, right? You'd carve your initials into it. Now you're in a line of code somewhere, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, to be honest with you. I mean, consulting's been fun. Consulting's been good. But it's, after 15, 20 years, it kind of, you need something else to get you out of the bed in the morning. And this is definitely it.
There was some.
I was just going to say, you look great. You look healthy.
Oh, thank you.
You look like you are just taking on the world.
Well, thanks.
There was something that struck my eye, and I know we're getting short on time, but I want to make sure we get to it because it's a concept that's relatively new, I believe, and not something a lot of people know. And it's called knowledge-based access control. So I think people are probably familiar with role-based access control. It's been around for like 800 years, it seems like. And there's a lot of failed RBAC projects that are out there and a lot of messes. We've heard things like attribute-based access control, ABAC, policy-based access control. And now we've got this thing that you guys have coined as KBAC. Is that something that, I guess, tell me about KBAC, knowledge-based access control. What is it, and
Sure.
how are you leveraging that?
So, the knowledge in knowledge-based authentication or knowledge-based access control comes from the knowledge graph and the data that's on the knowledge graph. What's amazing about graph database technology is that it's not just the data, the digital identity or the thing that digital identity is related to. It's the relationship between those two. With graph, you can extend, augment, add to, describe the relationship. So you may be connected to your real simple example. You're connected to your car. The label on that line says Jim owns this car. Okay, but now we can go back and using artificial intelligence, using machine learning, we can capture things like how do you use that car? When do you use that car? We can take that data, the things that we're gaining and we're collecting, or I should say collecting, but the things that are generated from the usage of that, feed that back into the relationship and extend the metadata around that relationship, and then use that data for access control.
It's interesting.
So it's not just I don't want to knock RBAC or ABAC, but it's
Knock it all you want.
well, it's limited in that you create a role and you have access to X if you have this role. But as the context changes, the roles don't necessarily keep up with that. Sure, you can log out, log back in, and get a different role, but in real time, the context may change in that you're, again, using that car example, you're driving at 50 miles an hour. So maybe the what you have access to needs to change. Like you shouldn't be accessing your phone, or you need to now access something, in the car, the radio, or whatever it is. But it's being able to feed that data back in, and that data is becoming knowledge because it's getting pulled from the usage, or getting pulled from the a machine on a machine floor. It's how's that data, the data that's being collected, and being able to augment that relationship that way, and then being able to have access to that. What's really cool about it is that at this point, because we work in identity, we've only talked about the security aspects of that. Sure, we can create access policies around that data. What's really interesting with this is that data becomes a valuable tool for non-security organizations within a company. So if you have access, you work in marketing, or you work in business development, or you work in whatever, and you have access to that. So you now have this related data and the augmented content around that, or the augmented metadata around that. Are there new services that you would offer to these customers because now you can see that they're related and how they're using the service? Are there new products that you would offer? Are there new things that you could recommend to them? Are there, kind of the world's, or
All this data, what are you going to do with it, right? It's like the sky's the limit. I mean, it sounds very much like this nirvana that marketing and like e-com teams of progressive profiling, right? You're building up this knowledge database around who's visiting, what are they doing, what are they interacting with. I mean, certainly privacy concerns come to mind, right? And I think there's a lot of concern, and probably rightly so, over, is the Facebook app, for example, listening to me, when I'm not using it, right? That sort of thing. What sort, the data being collected, et cetera. The controls that are in place there for the user to be able to manage that data, I would imagine, need to be very robust, but they also need to be user friendly.
Yeah. So we're closely aligned with the Web3 mantra, or the Web3, the components, I should say the components of Web3, decentralized, self-sovereign. That's huge. We're one of the few organizations at this point that's building consent at the beginning, so that
That's a really important step.
Usually
It's an afterthought.
it is, and it's usually.
And it shows. It's an afterthought.
Oh no, we have all this data.
Yeah.
Now this data. Now it's no longer a benefit to have this data. Now it's a liability to have this data. So we want to address that up front, so that if we are collecting the data, we are using the data, or maybe we're just referencing the data, the user has the ability to say, you know what, going back to the digital identity, well, these three properties or these attributes, I'll share them with you, but only for this week, or only for this one time, or only for whatever. And then being able to digitally sign the consent, so that if somebody comes back later and says, wait a second, I never consented to that, we have that audit trail, and it's digitally signed to say, well, here you did, you did sign that, the terms of whatever, and then the terms changed. You signed this version, you didn't sign that version. Having things like that, because I think all of that ties into the privacy and consent, and what you agreed, what are the terms you agreed to?
So going down a rat hole with this knowledge-based authentication, but I can see some real world use cases like you're in an e-commerce portal. Maybe you buy the membership that gets you the free shipping or stuff like that. Like you said, you don't have to log back out to now get permission to that. It just has to be added to the profile. What you have access to is now to tap into maybe some member section or
Right.
something like that. So totally real world use cases are abound, I think.
And I mean, that example, it's as simple as you creating a relationship from that what person's digital identity to that permission or to that object or to that whatever it is. And so you're not having to go back and say, okay, can you request someone add this role? The system is just creating that relationship, and you're moving along. And now that you have this new thing that you're related to, okay, well, what comes along with that, and being able to just roll with that, just have a system that just flows with that.
I'm looking forward to see where this goes, because I think obviously I see the promise of it. I'd like to see it in action and sort of like the real world and see how it works through. But I know we're running out of time, and we want to make sure that you can get out on the town and enjoy yourself. But before we go, we were kind of talking before we hit the record button here, and we got into the concept of what would it take to walk away from something. And for those who are familiar, the term is FU money. I won't spell it out here, but you can look it up, and it's inspired by our friend Mike Woodburn. And here's my question as we wrap things up for today. What is what is your number when it comes to FU money, being able to walk away from things?
So I want to be able to just say the number, and then that you guys are going to be like, here's the check, here's the giant golf check.
Check under your seat.
Better luck next time. Man, that's a tough question. And I know you're just looking for the short answer, so I'm just going to say a number, but there's a lot of caveats to this. Mm-hmm. Say my number is somewhere between 10 and 20 million.
10 and 20 million, I could do that. Yourself?
That's that's a much higher number than I was going to say. So first of all, I want to give a little bit of background. So Mike Woodburn is one of my favorite people, not only in the IAM industry, but in the world. I know he listens to the podcast, so
shout out Mike.
Shout out Mike, and you can send your check right to me. But I want to tell the story. So I went to Maui in like 2012 and came back and was like, I want to move to Maui. Then financial reality set in and got back to life and never moved to Maui. I met Mike, let's say 2015, 2016 timeframe, and Mike said, I'm going to visit Maui. I was like, Mike, when you come back, you're going to say, I want to move to Maui, and then you will never do it. Okay, yeah, right. So he goes to Maui, comes back, he's like, I want to move to Maui. Well, those who know Mike Woodburn know that he actually did follow through with it.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was, I think Mike is a smart guy in many ways, and obviously had his finances set up in a way that he was able to actually make it happen. So to me, the FU money answer is not a firm dollar figure, but it's about how much annual expenses I had covered, and I would need to have like a year's worth of expenses in the bank. The annual expenses part, unfortunately, goes up every year, right? So this year, I'm not even going to put a number out there because it's not important, but it will be more next year. And the reason I say 1 year, because it's kind of like, to me, it's like not me saying F you to the world. It's just being able to say, all right, well, I'm going to go do something else, and it might take me a year to do it, but today's my last day kind of thing. Not that I actually ever see myself pulling that trigger, but to answer the question,
I hired you.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that right in front of my boss, right? Yeah. So, anyway, that's...
I like that answer, and I feel like a lot of people hear that question and you instantly think, what number would it take for me to throw my laptop on the ground and walk out and do like a Jerry Maguire? But it's really about the freedom to make the choices. Like one question people will ask all the time is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And to me, that those two are tied together because that's really what FU money
That's a really
is
good
about.
point. Yeah.
It's what can I say no to? What choices, it's like I I would probably continue working if I had the, my whatever that number is, I would continue working because I like what I do. So it wouldn't necessarily be about, like, telling everyone to kiss off.
No, I think it's it's the crude way to be able to work on what you want to work and pass on the things that you don't.
Yeah. Well, and to not to make this all about Mike Woodburn because this is all about me, but Mike, having talked to Mike, I know that he makes choices. I go and buy a car, or I go buy a house, and I go buy this, and I have this is a reference for Mike, but I have 15 streaming services. Well, all of those cost money, but I'm making those choices. You don't have to have a ton of money to live the lifestyle you want to have. You just have to make the right choices to be able to do that. And, like the lifestyle or the choices that Mike and his wife
I think he
made.
also has the ability to go in and like someone describes their project and it's like, yeah, we'll throw money at you and still be able to like, no, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to spend my life force energy on that because I don't believe in what you're doing. You're making a stupid decision. I'm just not doing that.
Yeah, well, and I think that the key is like it's at what point in your life are you comfortable saying no to people and not having the fear of worst case scenario. So when I started out consulting, the thing that my wife and I would say is, hey, worst case scenario, I'll just go get a job, and it's like
That's how I felt. That's how I got into consulting. He's like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I can always go back to, being a civilian and not a consultant, whatever it might be. That was exactly what I thought. And I was like, it was a better time. I felt confident enough in my abilities, my network, my reputation, that if I went and did this and either I failed at it because I wasn't good at it, or I didn't like it, I could pivot and go back to what I knew that I was successful at.
Yeah, and I think what you hit on right there is it's having the confidence to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back to Gartner because
Oh, well, wait, what's your number?
good question. It's probably pretty high because I like nice things. I am a consumer, certainly, of a bunch of different services. I mean, could I get by on lower number? Probably. Do I want to? No.
Could you clean your own house?
I got many things to do. I don't know. That's certainly one of my guilty pleasures is a cleaning service. But enough of my first world problems. I would say I'm probably somewhere in the same area, 10 to 20 million, let's just say, because I feel like I like what I do. I do this podcast because I like to do it. The work that I do on identity as a consultant and, now leading an identity practice and building it up, right? And you're building it with me. I like doing that. It's fun for me. When it's no longer fun or the cons outweigh the pros, that's when I'll look for something else.
Right.
It's as simple as that. I will work until I can't work anymore. That's the way I look at it. Would I like to do nothing? Yeah, probably great for about a month.
For a little while, yeah.
Yeah,
For a month.
and then I get bored and I was like, I need to do something, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. There's a number. Let's just say, X million
Yeah.
at this point due to where we are from the economy. But that doesn't mean that I stop working. I'm going to go do something.
Right. There's only so many streaming services you can watch.
Right. Maybe I'll create a new one. All right. Well, I want to bring back to Gartner real quick because one of the things that came up in this, just while we were answering the question here, was it started off with Mary Massaglia when she opened things up on the opening keynote, and it was she talked about the generational divides and the people who are in the workforce now. Younger folks versus the older folks. And, I think everyone in this room is probably more on the latter side. And we didn't talk politics, religion, et cetera. Didn't have public stands in the workplace. And now, the younger folks are expecting to have some sort of position on things like that. And I think being able to have that discussion, say, yeah, here's what I want to work on and here's why. That's inspiring, right? No one wants to work on a project that they don't like. They don't want to do. They don't want to work for a team or a leader or a company that they don't support, right? Those sorts of things. So I think it's important to, even if it's not a number, I think the question is valid to say, okay, well, what is my intention here? Am I doing what I want to be doing, whether it's in the identity field or anything else, really? And I think we've come kind of full circle. We start with, Gartner 9 a.m. on a Monday, and here we are, local time, around 5 p.m. on the Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's I think it's interesting. I have two young adult children, and they're on the cusp of the rest of their lives. They're my daughter just finished her nursing degree, so she's starting out in the professional world, and to see the choices that they make and what's important to them. I mean, it wasn't. It's only a few generations separating, my daughter from my grandparents, to where my grandparents were like, no, you go to work, you do what you're told, you spend 25 years there, you get your watch, and that's it. What questions do you have? Mm-hmm. And I think that the younger people today have choices. There's not just one big company in town that you have to go work for, so you better not, embarrass yourself. They've got the freedom to make choices. They have the freedom to make mistakes. I don't necessarily agree with living out all your mistakes in life on social media, but that's their world today. Mm-hmm. And I think that I think people are much more health conscious. They're much more environmentally conscious, and so it wouldn't be fair to say, well, you can't bring yourself to work. You can't bring who you are. Mm-hmm. And so,
I think that when you can do that, that's when you found a place.
Yeah.
When you can be yourself. And I've been in positions where I don't feel like I can be myself, and others where I can. And it makes the world of difference in how happy you are, which then has an impact on the quality of the work and your just general demeanor. And it sounds like silly don't advice, but if you're not happy, go find something that will make you happy. All right, we've waxed poetic and we're getting short, but I know you want. I know you're like itching.
I'm like, yeah. So I think it's kind of ironic because I have been thinking about this the last 2 days, and it's kind of like, okay, our generation was attacking this the wrong way, right? We're not supposed to talk about these things. Mm-hmm. But imagine this scenario now where, on one hand, we're supposed to talk about all these things that have been taboo to talk about, and on the other hand, you're not allowed to judge anybody based on their opinion. So let's say one person's got very far left views and somebody else has very far right views. And they have to work together, right? Their views on things outside of the workplace really aren't relevant, mm-hmm. right? And, whether or not you believe then, the environment should be perfect, or you just think that people should be able to do whatever they want to do, whether you think that you shouldn't eat meat, or you're a foodie and you love to eat the most exotic foods, those aren't really relevant discussions for the workplace.
Right.
And whatever you like to do in your free time is kind of none of my business. What you practice for a religion or how you like to spend your weekends, it's not my business. And what I do on the weekends and what God I pray to or don't pray to, it's really none of your business either. Mm-hmm. So I get
all
where
choked
Mary
up
was
about
going.
it, Jim.
I don't know. It's getting I am getting choked up. No, I get where Mary was going with that, but I think we're living in a world where it's really not appropriate to be judging people, and the best way to not judge people is really not to engage in conversations that could become very polarizing.
Sure. Well, I think there's another form of identity. It's the more of the psychological, what's the Freud or the each version of identity. Mm-hmm. And people get wrapped up in, this is my identity. This football team is my identity. This car, the type of truck I drive is my identity, and they get wrapped up in that, and so they have to show that because this is my identity. This is, and it makes them feel better. It makes them feel more secure in who they are, and they, work is, well, I spend 8 or 9 hours a day at work. I have to bring and if you can put your Pittsburgh Penguins poster up, then I'm going to put a twice as big Washington Capitals poster up, and you start bringing this to work, and I think that it does. Some of that does unnecessarily draw attention to those things. I think that like we said earlier, people should be free to be themselves. But there are things that there's things you should bring along that you don't have to. That I think sort of make it complicate the work environment. I'm the one. I want to go to work, and I don't have pictures on my desk, and let me do my job, and then I'm going to leave after I'm done working, and I'm going to go live my life and do the things that I like, and the things that are my identity, and the things that are fun to me.
Just be nice. That's all I have to say. Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. That was very philosophical. I think that was fun. We'll go ahead and leave it there for this week. We will put a link to Indykite in our show notes. It's INDYKITE.com. Thank you so much, Brad. Finally, great to meet in person versus emails and things like that. If you've got questions about Indykite, we'll have Brad's LinkedIn in the show notes as well. So reach out to him and get some information. I think you've got an interesting story there, and I think I'm curious to see how it plays out, and I hope to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I hope you have me back, somewhere in the near future, and I can give you an update and kind of tell you how things are progressing. And if you'll have me, if I wasn't too bad, then I'd love to come back and talk more about it.
The door is always open. All right, we're going to leave it there for this week, or at least for this episode. We're just kind of here at the Gartner Gartner conference. IdentityAtTheCenter.com is where you find us on the web. IDAC Podcast is where you find us on Twitter. Tweet us questions, connect with us on LinkedIn. We're always happy to take comments, feedback, etc. Whatever makes the most sense, get it to us, and we can take it from there. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk with you all in the next one. Thanks for listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and visit us on the web at IdentityAtTheCenter.com.